Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This has been an extraordinary week, a little bit stressful, and as I roll into the end of this, at least with all the functions that were going on with the high school graduation and then the 8th grade promotion, which did happen and everything went okay with that, there was a couple of things that stood out to me that I thought would be good to take a moment and chat about. So one of the things that typically happens in our situations is one of two things. Either when we interact with our ex, they're going to act in a way to really stress things out and, jab at you, say snarky things, that type of thing. The other way they can respond is by acting like everything is just fine, that nothing is wrong. Outwardly, that would give anyone looking at the situation, depending on how we react, that this is just a good co-parenting situation that isn't a mess. And as I think about everything over the last, 8 years, almost 8 years, typically in public, my particular situation has always been act like everything is just fine, that there's nothing wrong. And one of the things that can do to really mess with you is question your reality. You can find yourself, especially early on, you can find yourself looking at this and going, is this really real? Did this all really happen? Or am I just blowing it out of proportion? Am I being the angry, bitter person, the ex that won't let things go that everyone portrays? That was one of the things I really struggled with in the early parts of this, because I did question myself. It was always in private, and it was always through attorneys, or it was always through email, where the really nasty, vitriolic things would happen. In public, it would be generally fine. And that's basically what happened the last couple of days. It's like, oh, hi, everything's great, I mean, and there were no conversations. I mean, it wasn't like the ex and I pulled off and caught up or anything like that. I kept my guard up like I always do. And she doesn't say anything. I mean, it's like everyone's guarded on what they say. But she is an outstanding actor. She can get in those situations and act as if nothing is wrong, everything is fine. And she's always been able to do that. And early on, like I was mentioning before, it really used to bother me, because I couldn't wrap my head around it. Now, back in the day, whenever I still wasn't completely sure what I was dealing with, then I would do, stupid things like try to open the door back up, try to have some conversations, and inevitably what would always happen, and I think most of you have had this experience as well, as soon as you let your security down or they have any inclination that things have gone back to quote unquote normal, you're going to get attacked. And that can, you can be attacked in a bunch of different ways, but that was always my experience. As long as I was agreeing with her, letting her do exactly what she wanted and get away with exactly what she wanted, then everything was fine. If I tried to establish my boundaries or try to make sure that my wants or needs were met as they pertain to the kids once the relationship was over, then that wasn't happening. This is the reason why absolute thinking is so critical when you're going through this, so that you can remind yourself what is real, what is really going on, who this person really is. Because if you lose sight of that, if you start to believe the illusion that's being presented in front of you, you are going to get burned. So the interesting part about this, on top of everything else, is the emotional letdown and stress that you have once things calm down, once the events are over. I've gone through 2 events this week, plus all the preparatory stuff of the events, all the stuff leading up to it. As I think I may have mentioned to you guys before, I think so, that my mom was coming down to be a guest of the ex during the graduation. So I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, how is that going to play out? What's going to happen there? All that kind of stuff, And amazingly enough, it canceled, right? So that was a little bit of sigh of relief, at least for a little while. So that was interesting. And then, you know, today was the promotion, or whenever you're watching this video, this morning was a promotion for my daughter from 8th grade. So effectively now the kids are out of school. It's, you know, one kid is only left on the family court order, and I feel drained, right? I mean, it was stressful the last couple of days. It's stressful to have to play the game. It's stressful to have to keep your guard up and be prepared and be vigilant so that you don't get played, that you don't get provoked. That's the hardest part on this, is that in the past, every time I would lull myself into a false sense of security, I would generally get trapped. I would have a huge trap that I would typically walk right into. So you end up having to be cautious about that, and you have to be cognizant of it so that you don't do that to yourself. You know, people just don't get it, right? I can see it. I mean, this is a good example this last week of why people looking at these situations just don't get it, because they don't understand how you can be this focused and concerned. Some people get it, right? I mean, some of the people who've known me for a long time know that basically the X is, you know, Satan. But it's just one of those things where most people looking at it just don't understand, right? It's just crazy. There was a lot of stuff that happened this week that was just stupid, scheduling wise and just whatnot. I mean, for Wednesday on the high school, that's when the high school graduation was. So my mom was supposed to come down and would pick up my son from his mom's house. You know, I thought my daughter was dealing with all the school stuff and the school was getting her to the thing. I must have remembered that wrong. So it turned into, you had to pick me up. I'm like, okay, fine. So then it was, Nana canceled, so you have to pick my brother up. I'm like, okay, well, you know, whatever. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. But then the little twist was, oh, by the way, we've scheduled a maintenance man to come over to the house, so my brother can't leave until that's done. And I'm like, what? Who in the hell would schedule a maintenance person coming over whenever you have to leave, you know, whenever there's a really short timeline? And what ended up happening for my daughter is that she had to leave early. She had to be there even an hour earlier than initially anticipated, which we live almost an hour away, about 45 minutes away from the venue. So it's like, okay, so now we have to leave earlier. So it's kind of like we went from having like an hour and a half buffer to like 40 minutes or 20 minutes. It was like, what the hell? I mean, it was a catastrophe. It worked out okay, but I mean, it was just the stress of that. You know, the kids trying to get a hold of their mom and she wouldn't answer, wouldn't talk to them, and you know, and we're running out of time, and it's just craziness. So the other avenue on this, so the 2 points I want to make on this video, the one is wrapping your head around whenever your ex acts like a normal human being and you know that they aren't, and it frustrates you, because I know this was what was happening with me early on, not so much now because I get it, but earlier on it used to slightly frustrate me because it wasn't true. And they're playing this illusion. Remember, narcissistic personality types do that. They have this facade that they keep up with everybody, and it drives you up the wall. Whenever you know it's not true, when you know that it's an illusion and it's fake, and that you are being slandered and you are being painted as the bad person, and they're the ones who are just making everything a living hell, it's really tough. So that's the first part about that, is just wrapping your head around that. Again, going back before, that absolute thinking is really critical whenever you're struggling with that. You need to remind yourself of all the past incidents that happen so that you stay on target with what reality is, with what you know is true. Because you will drive yourself nuts if you don't. I don't have that problem anymore. But that was something I do know, you know, in the first few years of this, the early parts of this, it was really tough. It was really hard for me to do that. The second part is being aware that even whenever you're finished with the event, expect that you're going to have an emotional backslide, get a little depressed. Your anxiety might go up just a tad after these events because they're so tough. Because you persevere through it, and then your body and your mind need to have a release for that. I think it's important to just remind you of that, because I know for me, when I used to have those events, those experiences, I would beat myself up because I'm like, well, it's over. I should be great. I made it through it. This should be like woohoo. I should be like ready to celebrate. And most of the times you don't. I didn't. I think it also didn't help that the venue for the high school graduation had no air conditioning, and it was freaking hot in there. And I think we were melting for almost 2 hours. So that was an interesting experience. This morning, the 8th grade promotion ceremony wasn't so bad. They had the air conditioning on. It was nice. It was almost cold in there, which was kind of nice. If you're dealing with this stuff, or maybe you just experienced some of this same stuff too, because it's kind of the time of year for this stuff to happen, just keep that in mind. If you're struggling with your ex putting on that facade, remember who they are. Don't falter from that. Don't beat yourself up on it. Remind yourself who they are. If you haven't done that absolute thinking video, or you haven't seen it in a while, and you find yourself going through that, I would highly encourage you to review that or revisit that. And the other aspect of it is give yourself a break on this emotionally, because this all is going to be tough. And you can expect, I would say there's probably like a 90% chance that you are going to have a letdown post these events. Maybe if you have your kids during them, which I guess technically I do, this is also the first day, maybe you'd have a distraction. But if you go from something like an event like this, and then you're by yourself, and all you have is that time with yourself to ruminate about this, just know that this is a possibility of what that you may go down. Journal about it. Get it out. You have every right to feel the stress and anxiety from what you've experienced, but don't let it grab onto you and control you too much. So on that, I'm going to wrap this up. I hope you're having an outstanding day. Hopefully you will have an outstanding weekend, and I will chat with you guys in the next video. Take care.